will come to order. All commissioners are present and all legal notices have been duly posted. Is there a motion to open court?
Second.
All those in favor? Bailiff, will please open court.
All rise. The Dallas County Commissioners Court is now in session for the August 2012 term. The Honorable Judge Jenkins presiding. Please remain standing for the invocation.
And the invitation today will be given by my guest. Stephen Lohofer is the youth worship director at Highland Park University Church in Dallas, which, by the way, is our family's home church. After graduating from Texas A&M University, Stephen enrolled at Perkins School of Theology at SMU. While full-time at Perkins, he's part-time at Highland Park Methodist, a full-time position in junior high ministry opened, and Stephen transitioned into that as a full-time minister. His dad was Methodist, his mother was Pentecostal, so Stephen's Sundays were filled with many different worship experiences. And also, he's been a blessing to me today because he has prayed with me this morning. So please pray with us all again.
Yes, thank you.
And the commissioner rightly says I need prayer.
Well, then we go up. Please pray with me. Dear gracious and loving God, we offer you thanks for this new day, for the chance to awake, to breathe life once again, and to begin anew that which you set before us. We thank you for this great nation, for the impact it has on the world and the lives it touches. Let us always be grateful for the freedoms and liberties we receive, and to use those as an opportunity for good. Allow us to always be an instrument of humanity, compassion, and love. We thank you for the great city of Dallas and for the people gathered in this room. May their time today be meaningful and beneficial. Be in their midst. May their hearts and minds be clear and attuned as they serve the community to the best of their abilities. Lord, we pray for those today who are hurting, for the sick, for the lonely, for the disenfranchised. Remind them of your presence. Fill them with your love and comfort them in their pain. We ask you today for guidance and strength as each of us look to carry out our roles and purposes in this world. May your presence and your spirit direct our actions both now and always. It is in your name we pray. Amen.
Well, welcome to this meeting of the Dallas County Commissioners Court. Our session today is comprised of 5 sections. We'll hear and consider resolutions and a presentation. Then we will be considering our formal agenda. We'll then recess into our work session for our briefing agenda. We'll hear from registered speakers. And finally, we'll convene in closed session to consider items as allowed by law. We've got 3 resolutions today, and the first is from Commissioner Cantrell.
Judge and Commissioners, it's my pleasure today to introduce a resolution on behalf of John and Betty Dodd. If God come forward with your family and friends, and I'll read the resolution and move its adoption. Whereas the Dallas County Commissioners Court takes special notice for individuals who have contributed greatly to our community and who have proven to be excellent role models. And whereas Mr. and Mrs. John and Betty Dodd will celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary on August 19, 2012. And whereas as Dallas County residents for over half a century, John and Betty met while attending East Texas State University, now Texas A&M Commerce. And whereas known as dedicated and proud parents of David Dodd and his wife Shannon and Angela Dodd Miller and her husband John, Betty and John were also blessed with grandchildren Justin and Carolyn Dodd, Matthew, his wife Caroline, Nathan, and Andrew Miller. And whereas while John continues his career as a certified financial planner and CEO of Honors Academy, he also contributed many years to our community as a former Dallas Independent School District board member, the former mayor and city council of Farmers Branch, a former board member of the Dallas MHMR and Dallas County Child Welfare Board, as well as continue to be active in many community organizations. And whereas Betty is a homemaker, teacher, civic volunteer, and board member for a variety of activities, including involvement at her children's schools, and is a member of the Prestonwood Republican Women's Club, the Farmers Branch Civic League, and the Farmers Branch Women's Club. And whereas together John and Betty attend the First United Methodist Church in Dallas, enjoy spending time with family and friends, community service, and relaxing at their East Texas Lake House. And Joe, I think you said I had to mention Oak Cliff Lions Club? Remember Oak Cliff Lions Club? Got mentioned. Okay. Now therefore be it resolved that the Dallas County Commissioners Court does hereby recognize and congratulate Mr. and Mrs. John and Betty Dodd for their golden wedding anniversary and wishes them 50 more years of wedded bliss and continued happiness. And I so move.
And I second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations.
John, would you like to say anything? We'll let you introduce everybody.
Okay, well, I think you did an excellent job.
Okay.
But really, this has been a marriage with Dallas County, because we had our children born in Dallas County. We had a beautiful marriage and looking forward to the next 50. But it's the children, and I congratulate you all for the service that you do for making this the best place to live, the best place to raise a family, and the best place to see God at work. And God is behind each of you doing a great job. So thank you for recognizing us. But it's you that make it the place to be for all of us. Thank you.
And I just want to add, congratulations, thank you, Commissioner Cantrell, for leading this resolution, because I have the pleasure of knowing John and Betty for many years, particularly John, in many different capacities at City Hall, as well as Oak Cliff Lion, like Mr. Wells said. You cannot forget, Commissioner Cantrell, to say that, or you won't pay. And I mean, you know, in our next meeting, if we didn't say that we're the best club in Oak Cliff. So, congratulations to you and your beautiful family for 50 years. It's easy to say, but I know it's a lot of hard work. So
We had a lot of passion.
correct. That's what we're
Thank you for all your hard work in the community. I see you, John, at everything, and you, Betty, about everything else. So we really appreciate all that you've done with outreach to our community in a real bipartisan way.
And thank you, our role model for the grandchildren too.
Yes.
This is the legacy, and it's what it's all about.
That's right.
Thank you for a great community.
Thank you.
And our next resolution is from Commissioner Price.
Judge, Commission, this morning we're pleased to have with us Travis Gordon Jr. Travis will come forward. He's got a delegation.
Yes.
Says whereas Travis Worthing Jr. has by virtue of his life's work accumulated a vetted record and a reputation in Dallas County and the state of Texas and across these United States by his incessant fight to promote quality of life issues for troubled juveniles and their families. Whereas Travis Worthing is an advocate of education and is a proud graduate of Bishop College and the Texas A&M University of Commerce campus, as well as certifications which include the area of crisis and intervention, individual and group counseling, drug counseling, gang prevention, mediation, and a plethora of certifications to his credit. And whereas Travis Worthing Jr. has been a stalwart and mainstay in the field of juvenile justice throughout his professional employment, where he has been lauded and cited for several outstanding accomplishments, which included the National Community Service Award of President Ronald Reagan, 20 citations of program safety, and the longest-serving superintendent, among others. And whereas Travis Worthing Jr. is well regarded in the community for his professional and personal leadership, and his involvement in programs such as the Cottrell House and the School for Juveniles, the executive board of the YMCA, Rainbow Bridge, the Harmony Foundation, and a list of other civic and social agency investments. Whereas Travis Worthing Jr. is a consultant, teacher, trainer, lecturer, speaker, writer, author, administrator, public relations resource, and a community bridge builder across all ethnic and racial divides, in addition to his charge as a father to Travis III, Karis, and the late Jerry, all of whom he loves and honors deeply. Now therefore be it resolved that the Dallas County Commissioners Court does hereby recognize and with great pride join with the Texas Juvenile Justice Department as it extends its best wishes to Travis Welcome Jr. for 32 years of superior service and a well-earned retirement. So,
I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. God bless you, Travis.
Give honor to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Did bring my praying entourage with me, including one of our associate pastors. I need all the help I can get. Told some folks that even as a child I couldn't color within the lines because I believed in challenging the injustices of our society, and early on I learned real quickly that I was named to serve kids. And the best example came for me when I was on the job the first day in the Dallas Juvenile Department, and I watched a 9-year-old kid sitting in a chair waiting in court with no parent at his presence, with his feet swinging back and forth, and he had been in the juvenile department 12 times at age 9. And that was my inspiration, and it's still my inspiration today. And I tell you all this in my closing. God's rules for raising children have not changed. We've been effective because we never wavered on God's rules for raising children. And we did it 32 years ago, and we do it today. And I thank you all for having us here in present today. You want to introduce your delegation? Yes, I will. This is my associate pastor, Reverend Porter from the Concord Missionary Baptist Church. I really need him with me. And this is one of my best friends, Jim Blythe, and his lovely wife, Diane. Thank y'all for having us.
And I was just Friday at the West Dallas campus of the Dallas County Community College, and Mr. Wortham was one of the presenters with a group of youngsters that were going to talk about things, that they were to talk about intervention, that we're going to talk about different topics about, for parents and kids, about the importance of education. So I'm sure it was a fantastic presentation, Mr. Wortham. You've been a pillar in our community for many, many years. Congratulations on 32 years, and good retirement is coming.
Well, I just want to say to Travis, and I see Strickland is here as well, Mothers Against Teen Violence.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, yes. But I just really appreciate the fact that you've had some personal adversities, and that has not nothing that charged you to continue forward. And just recently, I think that they found the perpetrator in terms of Jared's timely death. But you never wavered regardless, and you stayed with the kids. And I just want to say to you and yours, thank you. Thank you for all that.
We'll now consider item 8, our consent agenda. Is there a motion on the motion?
Second.
All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. We'll now consider court orders 9 through 68. Is there a motion on court orders 9 through 68?
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those carried unanimously. Courts now reconvene in public session on recess for its briefing session, and items to be considered for a subsequent open session. Mr. Martin, could you please take us through that?
Well, Judge, Commissioner, the first item I'm going to ask Mr. Johnson is to come forward with a very brief West Nile virus update. Good morning, Judge, Commissioners. Just to follow up from last week, I'm going to ask Dr. Perkins to give a quick update on where we are in terms of cases, deaths, and other specific information that he may have, and then if there's any questions, we will entertain those questions.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to give a West Nile activity in Dallas County. They closed the business day on Friday, August the 10th. At that time, we had 181 confirmed cases in our county. 114 a neuroinvasive or the more severe form of the disease or infection, and 67 were West Nile fever. Of the 104 neuroinvasive disease, 99% were hospitalized. Of those hospitalized, 42% were admitted to ICU. And at that time on Friday, we had 9 deaths. Unfortunately, I had to make an announcement on yesterday that we have experienced our 10th death as a community. Of the West Nile fevers, approximately 22% of those individuals were hospitalized as well. As far as the age distribution of the cases of the neuroinvasive, 68% are over the age of 50, 67% are male. Of those that we classify as West Nile fever, 63% over the age of 50, and 54% are male. As far as race or ethnicity of cases, 64% white, 21% Hispanic, 10% black, and the remainder are others. As far as the West Nile activity that's been reported to CDC, there's a lag time as far as the federal officials getting the tally or the data. We are 25% of the cases when you consider our numbers to the rest of the nation. So we're considered the epicenter. Now, in regards to what we're experiencing here, it's not unique to Dallas County because the surrounding counties are also experiencing quite an impact of West Nile infections. For example, our neighbor, West Tarrant County, reported as of Friday 146 cases. In their distribution, they have a majority of West Nile fever versus West Nile neuroinvasive. However, when we're looking at this disease, we're monitoring mosquito activity. And over the last month or so, we've seen a steady decline in the number of infected mosquito pools. For example, when I reported to the court on last Tuesday, we had a percentage of positive mosquito samples of 35%. As of yesterday, we were down to a 21.4% of our mosquito samples were positive for West Nile infected mosquitoes.
And that's prior to the ground assault.
Correct.
Just part of the mosquito protocol.
Right, so we're going to be ongoing monitoring the progress we're making in regards to this heightened vector attack toward the mosquito.
And Dr. Perkins, usually that is the case. Over the years, that's what we see.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
You know, at this time of the year, it starts increasing. You know, and as we get out of it.
Mosquito season generally runs from May through October. It usually peaks around about this time in August.
So we're going down, as we have seen since 2006.
Yes. Now, as far as the clinical pictures of human disease, there's generally a 2-week lag time as far as the incubation period in which someone might have been bitten by an infected mosquito, but they were not showing any signs or symptoms. They're going to be symptomatic until approximately 2 to 14 days later. So the activity as far as the treatments that we're now administering to our county, which I see as the patient, we'll see any meaningful results after 2 weeks of the mandatory treatment that we're doing at this time.
But the ground assault and part of the protocol under the mosquito plan is 3 consecutive days. And it's already on a decline. It's 3 consecutive days, and we began that yesterday.
Yes, sir. According to CDC, 3 applications of the medication in a row.
One of the things that we wanted to make sure was clear in all the confusion that has taken place, and I have to put it in context because clearly the court has agreed on an integrated mosquito control plan. We have brought that forward, and that has been our plan for years. And I want to be very clear because been
Yeah, I
miscommunication.
want you to be very clear, because the integrated plan means we've already had it in the plan.
It's already in the plan.
We haven't altered anything.
Right, and so as part of our steps, we've gone through those steps, and Arrow Spring is always, and I've stated that clearly, has always been a part of our plan, is the Commissioner's Court that would approve, not the department head, as it relates to moving forward with Arrow Spring. But I do want to clear up that this debate.
Actually, Zach, let me stop you there. The law is this, the home rule cities, each city will make their decision, not us.
No, I'm saying the approval for the Commissioner's Court for Arrow Spring, not, I got to the home rule cities.
And under a state of an emergency, it's a requisition order to the state, and that falls on me as the elected official over Homeland Security. And I hadn't made that, but just to be clear, so there's not confusion, each city will now make their decision as to whether or not.
Right, well, what I'm referring to, I want to make sure I'm clear, is that I'm referring to the mosquito control plan that we operate from, and so I didn't get to the other points yet. So if y'all allow me to go through that, I can finish. The concept is that the mosquito control plan that Dallas County Commissioners Court approved, I'm delineating that. And so that's what I want to make sure we're on the same page. At that point, any other action that's taking place can always, I'm assuming, supersede that. But at the point of our department, we follow the mosquito control, integrated mosquito control plan. And that's what this department was clearly focused on. And so at this juncture, I wanted to make sure it was clear that while there may be a message that I'm against Arrow Spring, it's always been in our plan. I'm for the process of vetting out the information. I would hope in the future that we would have a venue where we can sit down and brief the court, go through the issues that present itself ahead of time, so we don't have what has been created in terms of this atmosphere now. That's been my only request in this process, and I want to be very clear. For the cities, and for the employees of Dallas County Health and Human Services to really be put in this type of position, I would prefer that in the future we have a dialogue immediately so we can really be clear on our plan.
And Zach, what position are you put in? I'm not
Well, I
following.
think the position that we're put in is that there is a debate between, there should not be a debate about ground versus aerial. That debate, that discussion should have taken place earlier. But the position we're put in, well, the position we were put in is that we're following the integrated mosquito control plan. And that's what the court had approved. And so that's where we are. Anything else that's taken place after this, I'm not here to make an issue with that. I'm just saying I'm following the integrated mosquito control plan that has been a part of Dallas County plan for at least since 2002 and longer. And so I just want to make sure as we go forward that we get a chance to get together after all this is over and really look at our integrated plan again. But I want to commend those cities who work hard, who were in our Public Health Advisory Committee, who have met and had discussions. And so I just want to make sure that what's going out and what's being communicated is not accurate from my perspective. And so I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Tell us, since you're at the microphone, what is it that is inaccurate that is going out and being communicated?
Well, it's been communicated that Dallas County Health and Human Services, or even including myself, is against Arrow Spring. I'm for the process of discussion and vetting it out. I made it very clear from day one, even with my staff, even before any other points were brought up, that there has to be a discussion about the trigger points, what we should consider in terms of Arrow Spring, the dynamics that we're experiencing right now in terms of whether, FAA, getting planes. There's a lot of detail that goes into this, and I just want to make sure that we are dealing with this beforehand and not.
We do deal with it. It's called committee, where all of the cities participate. And we have a briefing for an hour and a half, of which everyone, including the medical society, is a part of that committee and is present. So that's exactly the committee. We have had this discussion for an hour and a half, where each individual up here has a representative at the table. So nothing has changed. And as a result, I too I'm against, aerial spraying. However, the plan is the plan, and the cities have adopted it. And at the last committee meeting, we asked the cities to go back and make sure that everyone still understood the plan and still was committed. And it's my understanding that we got feedback that everyone was still on board. So I support exactly what you said, and I do believe that somehow this is gotten out of kilter with regards to the department.
Well, Zach, I think you make a very good point about the process, and that you support the process. It isn't, as I understand it, it's aerial versus ground. It's that this is a process, and as I understand it, the cities have a choice as to whether they do aerial spraying or not. So this is not the commissioner's court imposing this on the cities. It's up to them. And is it my understanding that it's just 2 cities in the affected area in the city of Dallas?
I don't have the update, but what our plan is always, in our integrated mosquito control plan, and I'll be bringing forth a renewal of our aerial spraying plan in about 2 weeks. That's always been the case, that it is left up to the cities to make that decision whether or not they want to enter into aerial spraying. The difference in our plan, the Dallas County Commissioner's Court plan, is that the cities would pay a pro rata share under our plan. So I want to make sure that we're talking 2 different processes now. The one that we're operating under is the aerial spraying contract that we would execute based on the Commissioner's Court approval. We would then meet with those cities, get their approval, and agree upon a pro rata share of that aerial spraying cost. So that's the plan I'm operating from, and I just want to be clear that as to the court, if I'm stepping out of that plan, then I'm stepping out of the coverage of the Commissioner's Court. So that's just what I want to make sure is on the record.
And I want to commend the Medical Society, because they are taking a very proactive stance on this, a very strong stance. And I had a woman this weekend that was telling me about how she was concerned about a fish pond and the effect of the aerial spraying on it. We have got a health epidemic, a severe health epidemic, and the first person that died was a friend of mine. And so let's keep that in mind.
But it's also, I think, it's very important to put it on the record that the plan has been followed, as it's been followed for many years since inception. And at this point, we are prepared. However, I will express serious concerns about any aerial spraying as well. I hope that, as with the plan indicates, everybody looks carefully about all the different concerns that comes with doing something as drastic as aerial spraying. When our plan is working as according, as it's been working in the last 6 years.
And the plan did not come out of the head of the department. That is a protocol from CDC that we've implemented and embraced. The 3 consecutive days of spraying is where we're engaged now. This is the 2nd day. And we should have had other forces to come in to be a part of that ground assault today. But there is a protocol that says that within the 3rd day, if in fact the metric is that you're 90% abating, Dr. Perkins, am I correct? Then you are successful. And so we have set the traps, and we're waiting to see that ground assault to fruition. Is that correct?
Just so I understand exactly what you're saying, Zach, with regards to the Dallas County vector mosquito plan, you've operated under that. Then we had a state declaration of emergency declared by the judge. From my reading of the plan, it doesn't provide for that instance, that trigger point. Is that correct?
No.
Not correct.
So when you say that you're concerned that once you step out of that plan into, I'm assuming what is taking place under the judge, Homeland Security Emergency Management Director, his declaration and then his...
And states as jointly done.
And states. So you're concerned about moving over into that? Is that?
No, what I'm concerned is the process of the integrated plan. And what I've conveyed is that the court, in terms of briefing, before we actually have this type of scenario, and after we've met with the cities early on, then we need to make sure we vet all of the things that we've been vetting for the past 3 days. That can be done ahead of time. And so I'm not concerned now that we're stepping into another perspective. I'm supporting that. I'm on board. I'm engaged. I'm saying in the future, we realized from 2002 that this type of debate would eventually happen. And to be honest, this was the type of debate that I was hoping we could have in a different type form as opposed to a public debate that pits us against each other. I think that's really where my concern is. I think we can all agree on the protocol that we're under, but under the protocol that we are operating under, but if we have an integrated mosquito control plan and we decide to go in a different direction, what I mean by different direction, to stage 5 or 4 of the maximum plan, then I think as a community we need to look at the messaging, look at how we're going forward. That was just the thoughts I had in. I'm not questioning anything. I want to be clear. I'm on the side of protecting Dallas County residents, but I want to make sure that this type of public display that we're seeing is what I was hoping to prevent and to move forward in a strategic way toward where we need to be. That's the only thing I was trying to get to.
I think certainly there's lessons learned from what's taking place here. But now it's a matter up to the cities to determine whether or not they want to proceed. And I guess they're looking for more information, and I understand the judge is going to update us on that, but certainly my cities are looking for more of the pros and cons, and I think they're also looking at the data that's generated from it.
And I've asked Dr. Perkins to publish that from the public health committee side.
And let me, I did this yesterday with television cameras, let me do it again for anybody that missed it. There is no conflict and no distance between Zach and I. We are working together seamlessly on this. I want to commend, and in a moment I'll read a letter commending Zach's incredible work and Dr. Perkins' incredible work. Commissioner Price and I were out there with those ground troops last night in those trucks, and those folks are working all night long to try to keep us safe. We've got a situation here that is fast evolving. In a meeting that I attended at Zach's office at 2 o'clock last Tuesday, it became apparent that we're going to go with the ground plan. We need more trucks. I immediately called the appropriate person for the Texas Department of Emergency Management and the Commissioner of Public Health and asked for assistance. On a call at 10 o'clock that night, I decided to put together a group for a Friday discussion so we can look at the science of this and find out what would work. At that point, I want to make this clear because this is important for what Zach's saying. At that point, every person with the state and me were looking at solely a ground-based attack. It was our belief that a ground-based attack would suffice. Data changed, information changed, peer-reviewed articles were received. Some of those peer-reviewed articles were received from members of the Dallas County Medical Society who are here to speak today. We enlisted the help of the top person over mosquito-borne illnesses at CDC. I am not a doctor, but I've read 26 peer-reviewed articles and engaged in a couple of dozen conference calls with doctors trying to get a grasp of this. On Thursday night, after a consultation with the highest levels of state government and in coordination with the governor's emergency manager, I declared a state of emergency in Dallas County. At 9 o'clock the following morning, the state declared it. At 1:30 Friday afternoon, 18 people met for 2.5 hours on the 5th floor of this building. and after listening to all of them in my position as a Director of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, which by statute, the county judge is that person, I made the decision based on science that I knew at the time wasn't going to be an unpopular decision with probably a majority, and it had not been a sizable minority and a vocal group of our constituents. But I felt that this is a decision that has to be based solely on science, and so I requested the claims. In doing so, I did not authorize ground spraying on anyone. We have home rule cities, and those home rule cities, either through the declaration of an emergency and a decision by their mayor or a decision by their city council, will determine whether or not they engage in ground spraying. I'd like to read to you a letter I received approximately an hour ago from the Commissioner of Health for Texas, and I agree with him on this, but ultimately it will be left to the cities. Judge Jenkins, first I want to thank you for the hard work you and the Dallas County Health Department have put into fighting the West Nile outbreak in Dallas County. Over the last week, we have had multiple discussions with public health and emergency management officials representing your county and with our federal partners. I also appreciate the opportunity yesterday to have a frank discussion with the mayors in Dallas, or Dallas County. Based on the facts in the attached document and our lengthy discussions, I believe Dallas County needs to use all possible tools, including aerial spraying, to fight this outbreak. As we have discussed, I firmly believe aerial spraying is safe and effective. I have reached this conclusion through looking at the national experience and through our discussions with our federal partners in the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. I have reviewed and discussed the epidemiological data from Dallas County, including the locations of the mosquitoes and human infected with West Nile. In light of this data, my recommendation is that we start aerial spraying in all areas of Dallas County north of I-30, unless there is a reason not to do so in a specific location. I would also focus the land-based spraying in other areas of the county south of I-30 at this time. As Texas is a home rule state, the local mayors and you as the county judge are the final decision makers. Our department will support you in any decision you make as we work together to confront this outbreak. Thank you, David Lakey, MD, Commissioner of Texas Department of State Health Services. And I adopt that as my own position as well, and that's where we are. And let me make this clear. Because of this fast-moving decision, for those of you who are upset with this decision, this is a decision that I sought consultation on, but to the extent that you're upset about it, it's a decision that I made. It's not a commissioner's court vote. It's a county judge decision. So do not hold this decision against these other four people. But we're in a state of emergency, and we've got to move forward. And that's my position on this.
I was in that meeting as well, 2.5 hours. And again, from the CDC, I still believe that they, prior to this, which is in our toolbox, the whole aerosol piece, is that the ground assault was definitely part of the protocol. And they said, as Dr. Perkins just affirmed, that if the metric of 90% was achieved, 90% was achieved within 3 days, then that is deemed to be successful.
That is correct. And they also said, both last Friday and again Monday, that the most effective form of control for a diffuse-wide area like this is aerial, and they recommended aerial. And that's not anyone at the CDC. That's Dr. Roger Narski, who is the head of mosquito-borne illness for the United States. And so The decision that I made was based on the recommendation from the CDC, the recommendation from the state in consultation with Zach and his team, and a unanimous recommendation from the Dallas County Medical Society, which is a doctor group made up of doctors from every health system in Dallas County, which includes Baylor, Methodist, Presbyterian, Parkland, and the other hospitals.
Judge, I just want to commend you on your diligence in this area. You were on the phone with me a number of times last week. I know how you have studied this, that you've kept up with the progress, that you've listened to the experts, and at the bottom line, that you are, by statute, not the commissioners, in charge of emergency management. And I respect your decision.
Well, I respect your decision too, but some of the rest of us have decisions as well. And I'm still, I don't think we've given the public all the information. Part of what happened on that conference call, they talked about everything from the hatching and the breath of mosquitoes, the fact that they probably at their maximum traveled 200 yards. They talked about them not going above the tree lines. You're talking about aerial spraying. You know, there's a reason that we calibrate and use the ground assault the way we do, because we target them. We target them where they are. And based on that data, at 200 yard maximum, that data, and the fact that they don't pass above the tree line. What are the claims? I hear you, Judge, but I heard some different data in that particular meeting, and a number of our reports say something different.
Mr. Price, are you undermining the recommendation of this court?
Oh, it's the court making a recommendation? I didn't realize it was.
The judge.
Right. Unlike you, I've been on the ground. Unlike you. And so,
in fairness, I think what Commissioner Price is saying is that he disagrees with the recommendation, which
and I
is
said that to Dr. Lakey as well.
absolutely, you're right.
And he agreed. He agreed that right to the district.
I agree.
Okay.
Let me make that real clear. I agree that you have the right to disagree, and I agree that Ms. Land, who is here, has a right to disagree, and many others, and I know many of you do disagree, and I respect that. And I think as the mayors make these decisions, for those of you who want to state your positions on this, then that is acceptable. I've made my decision. My decision as county judge is to requisition the necessary plans or things that we need to combat. I've requisitioned them. I know it's a tough political decision for some of the mayors and city councils, so I'm also here saying publicly, I support them using it. I support the recommendation of the CDC and the state of Texas on this. And again, to the extent that I run for office too. I understand how this works. The lives we save don't know we saved their lives, and they're not going to remember this when they go to the voting booth. A lot of you folks are, so remember my name, but don't blame these poor folks. And with that, should we get to the speakers?
We're not there yet. We're not there.
Oh, let's finish the briefing.
Can I ask for a minute, Judge? Today I have two interns that are here with us at the Dallas County Commissioner Court. And one of them is Tania Peredo from Irma Rangel School. She's going to be an 8th grader this coming year. And she's one of the ladies who was here when the school came to hear some of our meetings, and she was very impressed. She wants to be, she hasn't decided she's going to be a dentist or a lawyer. You know what side I'm pushing for. So Tanya, it's really nice to have you with us today. And I don't know where she is, but she's being helped by my Deputy Chief of Staff, Ms. Blanca Torres. Tanya, would you please stand up?
Did she say that?
Yes, there she is. Thank you. And the other... drills. You know, he's a senior in Saxe High School, and he's going to be a senior this coming year. He is my nephew, I have to disclose that, and he wants to be an engineer. So, General, could you please stand up? And he wanted to come and see the engineer department, so our home is there, and she's going to be kind enough today to show him what we do here in Dallas County in our engineer department. So both of you, thank you guys for being here, and I hope you have good.
That means you might have to work on Sunday. Out of the district.
Yes, definitely. Okay. Have I ever stopped doing that? But anyway, thank you both for being here. Thank you, Ms. Gary.
Also, before we get back to briefing on the moment of personal privilege, I see in the background, on the back row next to my mama, by the way, let me say hello, Mama. Mama's in the house today.
You could disclaim.
But next to my mother is Martha Williams. So Martha, could you stand up for a second? I want to recognize Martha Williams. She's a teacher with DISD, and she is responsible for the internship program at Skyline and teaches some of the most gifted and talented students there at Skyline. Does a fantastic job with the kids. It really makes an impact on the lives of the students at our largest DISD high school. So thanks for doing everything.
Item 1, Health and Human Services. 1A, recommends approval of interlocal agreement with the City of Dallas for fiscal year 2012-2013 HOPWA funds. Item 1B, recommends approval of the Texas Department of Health document attachment, TB State. Item 1C, that court order is on your formal agenda. Item 2, County Auditor, recommends approval of a contract with Talks to process employee income and employment verifications.
And this is at no cost, correct?
To the county auditor board.
Thank you.
Item 3, Fire Marshal, that quote is on your formal agenda. Item 4, Purchasing, recommends Moody Nolan BAI as the firm susceptible for award consideration and authorize staff to proceed to final negotiation for the SOQ for architectural engineering services.
Since we're making it clear on 3, that's only in the, where's Marshall Dallas? That's only in the county, right, Marshall?
Yes, sir.
That's only in the county?
Yes, sir, the county.
So they can burn it. And incorporated all.
The fireworks are okay, right?
No.
Oh gosh, you better get out of this now.
That is the actual county burn man, correct. Item 5, Public Works. 5A, recommends acceptance of the offer and purchase agreement from Next Lots 3 LLC for tax foreclosed property at 909 Siegel Road in the city of Siegelville. Item 5B, recommends acceptance of the offer and purchase agreement from Next Lots for tax foreclosed property at 430 North Main Street in the city of Hutchins. Item C, recommends approval of Amendment 1 to the contract for laboratory services with Mastech Engineering and Associates. And item D, recommends approval of the contract and funding with AECOM to prepare preliminary engineering of the Southern Dallas County Infrastructure Analysis Report recommendations for water and wastewater infrastructure improvements. Item 6, IT. 6A, recommends approval of the amendment to the personal services contract with Insight Global for the services of Edward Patterson. 6B, that court order is on the formal agenda. And 6C, recommends approval of the attached change management policy for review and distribution of county departments for 14-day review and comment periods.
And Mr. Martin,
Yes,
Mayor Victor, we are, all these positions, I understand, have been, approved by our committee, IT committee as well. We're working very hard to be sure that any kind of changes that go through the JP course and the change of plan, we will accelerate, the IT portion, so we can start taking credit cards and at the JP course as soon as possible.
Yes, ma'am. We're working obviously with as part of a kind of a tag team with the county treasurer's office as well as the audit and budget to do the phase 1 implementation of the changeover from Bank of America to Chase, but also to begin to go through actually address the issues as far as being able to actually take credit cards. That's not necessarily in phase 1 that would basically come as a second case. But certainly, we're working to go to Lancaster, work with them to go to Lancaster, make that a reality just as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
So it minimizes the impact of the actual JP Court's operation.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Item 7, budget, you have a number of items. 7A, you have conference travel training requests. 7B, hiring physical exception and constable PC5, county clerk, county treasurer, district clerk, district attorney, 255th Family District Court, Homeland Security Emergency Management, IT, and public defender. Item 7C, recommends deleting 2 full-time security guard positions and adding 4 part-time security guard positions. Item 7D, recommends the addition of an inventory control specialist position for facilities management and recommends human resource civil service review for proper classification. Item E, recommends the replacement of 42 vehicles identified in the attachment in your briefing. Item F, recommends acceptance of unclaimed funds from the Texas Controller of Public Accounts.
Let me just start on that subject. Is that all? What percentage of does that represent?
It represents very few, actually, of our overall vehicles. It's probably around 3%, 2%. This is the first of the two cycles. This is the non-law enforcement. We were really pressed up for vans, and so there's a lot of vans, trucks, and everything from big rigs for the delivery of foods in the TDC buses and then put it. Right after October, with the new funding, we'll be doing another briefing, which will be focused on the squad cars. We wanted to break it apart for the make-ready purposes versus trying to do it in one big order.
What's the turnaround? What's the
Yeah.
We'll do some cooperative contracts to go find them as quickly as we can. Hopefully even some that may be on lots that we can pick off.
Availability in the past, we've had some challenges on availability.
This part of the summer will be a little bit of a difficult time, but we'll with this full list, we'll start on trying to source those.
And on that second round, I don't know how much lead time you need.
The second round is really these contingent on the sheriff's office deciding what kind of vehicle they want. They've got the Chargers, they have new Fords, and so they're still testing them. And so we're kind of working through that. Of course, we are still kind of working through the fact that our ASC manager is incapacitated at this time.
Well, and because of all of that, somebody in the department needs to go ahead on.
Well, I think they're pretty close to making a decision.
We have a plan in place, we have an individual that we're going to place into there for any period of time.
And this goes according to our replacement maintenance plan that we have reviewed in the past.
We had suspended our replacement plan and actuality during our financial crisis.
Right, but
this is allowing us to get us back into the financial crisis. The first round will cover all the category 1s and category 2s. Second round will cover any new ones in category 3s. So this should get us back to where we need to be. There obviously will be a third round in the third year, but we'll get there.
And when we're, as we discuss the maintenance from now on, this is part of that maintenance plan. And that was my question, going back into.
We'll go back to the plan of if it's over 10 years, if it's over 150,000 miles, if it's over 70% of its maintenance cap. That's our goal. It takes us about 3 years to get there.
And so we're going to be real clear. Maintenance has not been a problem.
Correct.
Right. It's just that we had a policy of replacement.
Replacement is what's the problem.
We suspended the replacement. We maintained all the maintenance.
Yeah.
It was just the suspension of the replacement. So we have some vehicles that are now over 15 years and some that are pushing almost 200,000 miles. And those obviously are starting to cause us maintenance costs. So it's time to get them out of the fleet as quickly as possible.
And ASC has done a fantastic job of maintaining the vehicles, and to their credit, they have done a wonderful job.
We maintain a lot of vehicles as well. Okay.
Item G in budget, recommends the reinstatement of one senior secretary position for the Department of Veteran Services and recommendation on civil service review the position. Item H, recommend approval of submission of a grant application for the 2012 firefighting grant program. Item I, recommends acceptance of the grant award for the Office of Attorney General, Crime Victim Services Division. And item J, recommends submission of the grant application to the Texas Veterans Commission Funds for Veterans Assistance. Judge, if there are no questions or information or miscellaneous, Mr. Brown, do you have one bring up?
I do have one bring up. It's $20,000 out of a grant for a West Nile video production. It's a production of web videos for educating Dallas County residents.
state don't have one, we make it all.
Right, yeah, I understand, I got it.
I have a question. I wanted to ask about D, number 5D, and that's about the Southern Dallas County infrastructure analysis. We have a lot of disagreement in the past over an infrastructure study that would hold up the inland port. And so I want to know, first of all, is this going to hold up the inland port as far as the developers that are being able to
No, absolutely not. What's happening with that, that's a great question, but you're absolutely wrong. All of
I'm
the,
not against it before, Commissioner, so I really want to hear what the facts are this time.
But if you read, you know.
the major developers out there in support of this, what we're trying to do is put together through the COG, and they've done a great job, and then Half and Associates is kind of level on that. And as far as the contractor, there's been a group, we're looking at some developers, a group of people on that. We're looking at ways to get infrastructure there. So we've got several great things happening at once. The state is going to name the 45 corridor between the Port of Houston and the inland port as their suggested test project for a heavier truck with an extra axle, so we can get the product from Houston here. Soon we'll be announcing $50 million from the state to begin Loop 9. What this does is it gets the water and wastewater infrastructure and some of the service road infrastructure to those developers so they can build those logistics warehouses and those light manufacturing facilities that are going to continue to be desired in that area because of being the influx of 2 rail lines and 3 major highways. So I think they're in support of it. There was some concerns earlier from some developers that somehow they get shut out of the process, but all the feedback that I've gotten across the board has been positive for having going forward.
Well, Judge, I appreciate that, and I know that's the intent. I just want to say that on October the 21st of 2008, members of this court voted against the county being involved in the port. There's been, as the news media has said, a lot of dissension over the inland port. I just want to be sure that that this doesn't withhold the inland port from going forward. That's all. And if there is some concern about that, I think this is a briefing agenda, and this is a time for folks to come home, to come to let us know if they have concern. I hope and pray that this is not the case. This is a huge the inland port is a huge economic generator in Dallas County. And it's something that simply must go forward. So I just want to go on record and make a request to those of you who may have concerns to let us know in the next week, because this will be, unless we hear some cogent reasons, this will be voted in next week. And I'm not saying that I'm against it. I'm saying that if there are facts here that we're not aware of, we need to know. One other question, and Alberta, I'll ask this of you. I noticed that this $400,000, $431,000 is coming from Fund 196, the thoroughfare fund. Is this Dallas County money, or is this grant money coming from elsewhere?
Commissioner, actually, I'll respond to that.
Oh, okay.
This is the Dallas County funds. This is borrowing from the thoroughfare plan in order to move forward with this particular project. We will be working and developing a plan for the repayment in the future, but this is just using those funds. Alberta does, I think, have a briefing that she'll be coming forward in the future, which would allow us to partner with other entities on 50-50 similar to our transportation projects. But right now, this is a pure borrow.
So this is county money.
Right, and
Well, thank
we're
you.
going to work hard to get that briefing to you by next month on looking at MCIP and moving forward.
Well, may I suggest that we put the vote off until we have a briefing on this? Because this is, just reading this what it says here, and this doesn't really share with the public, and I know there's a lot of concern about the inland port, and there will continue to be concern. I think it would be much better for this court and for transparency to have this briefing sooner rather than later. That is, before we take the vote rather than afterwards. And I'm not suggesting anything, I'm just saying that
One thing I would
now is
recommend,
the time.
Commissioner, here is that we are trying to work heavily with DWU and with some of the infrastructure projects that we're working on right now, like Bonnie View, to try to get some of the things tied in right now. And we're using AECon to actually start doing some of the preliminary engineering work. We have projects that are underway, and if we don't start soon, we miss the time frame that we need to do some of the work, taking time to some of these projects that we're already are on the table right now.
Well, I realize that we're in a hurry and we have reasons for this, but I say again to the public, if there are concerns about this, let us hear us now, because we're due to vote on this next week. I've asked that the vote be delayed, but I would like for this court to consider that. But if not, I'm just saying, this vote may take place next week. Let us hear how you feel about this.
Judge, that concludes your briefing agenda. You have a number of speakers listed.
We have a number of speakers listed. Will the bailiff please read the rules of decorum?
All Commissioners Court attendees are hereby advised that this meeting is conducted in accordance with the provisions of the Dallas County Code, Section 74-71. Visitors and registered speakers are to preserve order and decorum at all times. Personal, profane, or slanderous remarks are not appropriate and will not be allowed at any time during this public meeting. Any and all applause is kept brief in observance of time constraints. Disruptive visitors and/or registered speakers may be removed and are subject to the penalties provided in the State of Texas Penal Code Sections 38.13, 42.01, and 42.05. Registered individual speakers are limited to a maximum of 3 minutes, and the maximum discussion on any one topic is limited to 30 minutes.
Our first speaker today is Mr. Ty Thomas. Mr. Thomas, please. Mr. Ty Thomas. Mr. Ty Thomas. I'm not seeing him. I'll move to the next speaker. Our next speaker is Ms. Patricia Coates. If I mispronounced that, I apologize. Ms. Patricia? Yeah.
Did very well with the name.
Good. And Ms. Coates, you can pull that down to your light.
That's all.
And anywhere it's comfortable for you. If you just begin by stating your name and your address, then you'll hear a beep. And at the end of 3 minutes, if you're still speaking, you'll hear a series of beep. Just finish your thought for us at that time. I won't cut you off, at the word, but just finish your sentence of your thought. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Judge and Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've been listening well and appreciate that Dallas County and City, where I live and have been for 20 years, is in a very difficult position with regard to the West Nile situation. I haven't heard a lot about the health effects of the pesticides, and there are those. They are tremendous. I stand here before you today as a person who had been very well, working, studying, and was not considered vulnerable. I was exposed to a pesticide that was applied by a licensed applicator. It was said to have been dissipated. It started a downward trend, and so I stand here. I came to Dallas because Dallas City hosts and boasts of the foremost clinic in the world for the treatment of those who have been chemically injured. Most of those people have been injured by pesticide. I know that the city and the county have worked very hard. I'm a member of the Concerned Citizens for Safer Mosquito Control, who works very actively, CSC, and a member of the city, and very well, and appreciated very much the responsiveness. That was one of the things that made me decide to stay in Dallas, plus I need the intensive medical care. A number of people that have been injured are in this metroplex, throughout the metroplex. I live directly in the area designated to be intensely ground sprayed and aerial sprayed. There is no safe way to protect everybody with aerial spraying. There will be injuries. It's happened in 2000 when New York City sprayed aerial in response to the West Nile. There were more injuries showing up in the emergency room from the pesticide than from the West Nile. One of our doctors, Dr. Larry Plumley, could not be here today. We received an email from him. He's a Harvard graduate and very concerned. I live in a building with all of the people there are chemically injured. There is no way to protect us. We cannot adequately seal. We cannot go elsewhere. We have homes that have been modified to accommodate our disability, which is our disability is recognized by the federal and state as a recognized disability, and we cannot just live somewhere. I get ongoing daily intensive treatment here, and I'm just asking for really to hear loudly and clearly that I'm not an expert, but we do have those ones are, and Dean Helen Richardson, an entomologist, has offered his services free of charge to the city, to the county. There are ways that we worked intensively. Dr. Garcia was on the city, with the city, met with neighborhood groups. I know the city has worked very hard, and I know the city has attempted to respond to our location, to give us some buffer. There is no way to buffer us with area. And there will be people who will be injured. Again, I was a well person. I was not sick. Now I am one of the people most vulnerable to the West Nile as well. I understand that. But I ask for your consideration. I also would like to hand out, here is a letter from...
You'll just give those to Daryl, the
okay.
man sitting to your...
Just Mr. Mayor, say this from Mr. Earl Bremmel, who owns the building, and his wife is paralyzed. They went to location, as well as a handout from, would ask the commissioners and the judge to look seriously at the threat of the West Nile, this article about the efficacy of spraying versus other.
I'll hold us to our time limit, but I give you my word, I'll not only read it, I will send it up the chain to the CDC, to our local doctors, to Zach and his team, and to the state. And thank you for...
Can I just say one word? The pyranol butoxide is a part of the synthetic predatory being used. That paralyzes the ability of the body of the mosquito to detoxify. That's what happens to people when they get exposed. It interferes with the body's ability. Former mayor of New York City.
Ma'am, I'm going to have to...
Okay, I'll stop. I'm sorry.
There because of our time constraints.
Sorry.
I'm trying to keep it a little...
It's very, very Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Copes.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ms. Jennifer Land. Ms. Land, again, if you would just state your name and your address.
I'm Jennifer Land, and I'm at 3905 Weyburn, and that's in Dallas, and I'm also a member of Concerned Citizens for Safer Mosquito Control. Back when we worked with the city, we facilitated an expert panel of scientists, entomologists, public health experts who specifically talked about the public health effects of spraying, and particularly aerial spraying. I wrote my remarks as I prepared to load up my car with everything I own and leave the city I have called home for 38 years. I am now older than my father, a former Dallas Assistant District Attorney, when he died from an environmentally induced cancer after an exposure to a now-banned pesticide. With his tragic passing, he left me two legacies: a deep commitment to truth and civic service, and an acute understanding of the fragility of life in the face of an increasingly toxic world. I will start first with the truth and how it has been lacking in this process. County officials have repeatedly stated aerial spraying in other communities has had no ill effect. This is patently false. Not only have there been numerous injuries in California and New York that have led to successful injunctions and lawsuits, which an attorney will speak to in a minute, the company that was hired, Clark Environmental, was slapped with a six-figure fine for improperly training applicators who were injured by the pesticides they were spraying over New York City, as New York Daily News article in front of you. Also in an article you will see from the San Francisco Chronicle, over 400 people were reported injured in California from aerial spraying, and Santa Cruz successfully sued the state to stop the aerial spraying, and a state health report found that the aerial spraying put some people at risk. So truth has hardly been forthcoming in regards to safety. I learned firsthand pesticides are not safe. I have 40 times the average level of pesticide metabolites in my fat tissue, confirmed by a biopsy investigating the source of a disabling immune deficiency that has left me acutely sensitive to pesticides. So the prospect of aerial spraying a known neurotoxin that has been linked to pediatric brain tumors moves me on a deeply personal level. I not only am thinking of myself as I write this, I'm thinking of the children who will climb on playground equipment covered in pesticide residue, which breaks down in sunlight but can persist for months in shade. I'm thinking of the lives that this strategy deems expendable: night shift workers, policemen, policewomen, the homeless, and anyone unwittingly exposed to the spray or its residue because they are outside at night. Yet officials continue to falsely state the pesticide is safe, which violates federal law and contradicts the call for protective measures. If it's so safe, why are we encouraged to take precautions? Pesticides by design are neurotoxic. They not only kill mosquitoes but also their predators, nature's way of keeping them in check. Pyrethroids also can poison a human being, causing short-term symptoms like dizziness, nausea, vomiting, seizures, and incoordination, just to name a few, which in some cases can progress to cerebral organic disorders, vegetative nervous disorders, and autoimmune disease. Many experts agree spraying is the problem and not the answer. A recent New York Times article reported on the explosion of zoological diseases like West Nile and how the most recent research points to the destruction of the ecosystem as the source of the disease spikes. Aerial spraying profoundly disrupts that ecosystem.
Gwen, your time's up, but it sounds like you're reading, and if you would like, one of my staff can make a copy, and I'll ensure that the rest of your words get to us. And again, I will share that with the people at the state and federal level and the local folks that are assisting us as well. But we've got to stay on this time frame.
I understand that, and I would just really encourage y'all to look at a company that has been slapped with a six-figure fine for injuring people in New York City for aerial spraying for West Nile. Thank you, and I appreciate your consideration.
And there's, yeah, you can give that to Shay, she'll make a copy, and I'll ensure that it goes up the chain. And our next speaker is Mr. Richard Demaria. And again, here's a statement, and then...
Yes, Commissioners. Rick DeMaria from 727 Richmond Avenue, Dallas. I'd like to read a letter from a local scientific expert who is out of town on business, Dr. John Fennell. Dear Dallas County Commissioners, I am a resident of Dallas, a doctor, epidemiologist, and environmental engineer, writing to express my interest and concern for the public and environmental health of the city of Dallas in regards to the proposal to conduct aerial spraying as a part of Dallas's mosquito abatement policy. As a native Texan raised in Dallas, I have a vested interest in protecting the health of my family and my community, as well as the fish, frogs, fowl, and fauna. Public health policy should assess and balance the risks of exposure with the risks of disease and the risks and benefits of the proposed risk abatement strategy. It is for this reason that the mosquito abatement policy should be reviewed and implemented with due diligence. Is there a greater potential that exposure to aerial spraying may contribute to a compromise in the health of the young, elderly, and respiratory compromised, putting them at greater risk of developing the more severe presentation of West Nile? These are important questions which should be explored. I suggest that aerial spraying is an indiscriminate and inefficient approach to the mosquito abatement and is not an effective public policy for the prevention of West Nile. Following, I will discuss how aerial spraying poses unintended consequences which are contrary to the sustainable public health strategy to managing West Nile in Dallas. There is no evidence that aerial spraying is either safe or effective as a mosquito abatement strategy. In fact, there is a growing body of evidence that aerial spraying places public health at risk. Aerial spraying may negatively affect mosquitoes in the path of the pesticide cloud, but it will also have a negative effect on bats, birds, fish, and frogs, the mosquitoes' natural predators, which may lead to a long-term increase in the mosquito population. Perhaps a better approach would be to provide
long-term housing to our natural allies in the fight against mosquitoes in the form of bird and bat houses, in addition to the current practice of stocking mosquito fish in ponds. There are risks to human health and pet health from ingestion, inhalation, skin contact, or skin absorption of pesticides, including acute risks of respiratory distress, nausea and vomiting, and increased long-term risk of developing neurological disorders and cancers. While the U.S. EPA currently limits the aerial spraying of pesticides in populated areas, there is an exemption for departments of public health. This exemption should, however, be used with caution. Long-term low-level environmental exposures, insidious by nature and its impact on the health of the community, should not be underestimated. Of equal importance,
How much, I want to really lax with the rules today because this is an important public issue. How much more you got?
well, I can finish there, but we would like to submit copies of those letters, okay?
I would like you to submit that. You could submit it electronically, since you got it electronically. That'll help me to send it up the chain.
All right, Judge.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ms. Griselda Oliver. Ms. Griselda Oliver. Miss Oliver. All right. Ms. Oliver doesn't appear here. Our next speaker is Ms. Michelle Schultz. Hi.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm here to present a slightly different perspective on the aerial spraying issue. I am a licensed attorney and, my name is Michelle Schultz. I'm at 5220 Spring Valley Road in Dallas. Thank you. I'm a licensed attorney. I'm a founding partner of an international trade law firm based in Dallas. We're women-owned and we have created over 40 jobs at a time. Our business is compliance and enforcement, and what we do is risk assessments looking at potential liability exposure for companies. When I look at this situation and the history of lawsuits that have ensued from pesticide spraying and aerial spraying, I have to wonder how the city of Dallas is planning to pay for the fallout. I think that when aerial spraying comes about, we're going to see lawsuits. We've seen them in the past. In New York in 2000, there were hundreds of reports of health problems, and they even had to start a pesticide tracking program because pesticide is very difficult to track. In 2008, the city of Santa Cruz sued the city of California, and there were thousands of complaints, over 400 injured. And finally, a state commissioned report halted the aerial spraying in that area. So as an attorney, I am considering the cost and the legal fees, and I think that everyone here should consider if we're ready for the economic effects. Do you want to pay for the litigation? I know that I don't. And I think that spraying should be a last resort. It should be targeted if it happens at all, and we should consider alternatives. I'm also a mother of 3, and they're small children, and I can tell you on a personal level, I really hope that my children are not exposed to this. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Brandon Pollard. Mr. Brandon Pollard. Mr. Pollard. We'll come back to Mr. Pollard. Our next speaker is are you Brandon?
I am.
Brandon, come on up.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith goes to Washington. I am Brandon Pollard. I live at 5829 Rieger Avenue. I'm a tax-paying citizen of the city of Dallas, as well as the county of Dallas. I'm a beekeeper. I'm also a farmer. I'm here today to let you know that not only am I supporting vertebrate life, I'm also here to support invertebrate life. We do have a state of emergency in Texas, and Mr. Jenkins, Judge Jenkins, I'll tell you that My bees are in a state of emergency. My bees are dying. This is my business. My bees are pollinating the food that goes on every single one of these people's tables. If we don't have our pollinators, we don't have our food. Honeybees are responsible for 1 in every 3 bites of food we eat. There's a 38% decline of honeybees in America. This is a global problem. In the way of microcosm, macrocosm, my wife and I, my lovely queen, who I always defer to, have been keeping bees in the Dallas area for about a decade. And it's becoming increasingly more difficult to do so. This is a neurotoxin. And with all due respect, Ms. Dickey, to your friend, we also have gardener friends that have West Nile in their body and carrying it around, and they're able to produce food out of a community garden by the process of pollination with the service of our honeybees. And sadly, even though it is about precious human life, some people have pets, some people have kids, we have bees, and we have lost thousands and thousands of bees. I could argue we've lost millions of bees. This is how I make my living. Our bees are providing food for the people that are in this room and for their tables that are trying to mitigate the issues of their economics with themselves trying to pay their bills. They're trying to grow their own food, and in order for them to do that, they have to have the pollinators. And this is a neurotoxin that we're spraying on our citizens. This is a permethrin and piperonyl butoxide. The chemist was telling me that in 30 days, the half-life of this permethrin is 30 days when it gets into the soil. When this piperonyl butoxide gets into the soil, it has a 12-day half-life. We're spraying this on our citizens. And in the way of neurolinguistic programming, you were talking about, we've been our ground troops and the ground spraying. Those trucks and those machines that are on the backs of those pickup beds, you might see the local TV broadcast, but they're not pointing down, they're pointing up. And like my bees, mosquitoes don't fly at night. This is terribly ineffective. I would consider ground spraying to be gentlemen that are walking around with backpacks with the chemical that's actually targeted to those ponds and to those places where there's been positive cases of West Nile, whether it's in a pond or in a person. And as a beekeeper, we take care of over 100 colonies here in the city of Dallas. We take care of thousands of colonies in the county of Dallas. And I can't tell you there's other bees that are being compromised by this neurotoxin. I would like to say that for the court, I do have 108 signatures of all the people when I was selling my honey to our citizens that our bees produce. There's 108 signatures of people that are concerned not only for their local honey product, but they're also concerned about their local food product. And I would also just like to say that it just does not at all make any sense because the city of Dallas calls us to save bees, and the city of Dallas and University Park and Highland Park and the county of Dallas are killing our bees. So to me, this seems to be a sad situation for a beekeeper that makes his living in the city of Dallas. And just like any cattle rancher, I can't move my herd to places that are greener or places that are cleaner. My bees fly 3 to 5 miles, and I can mitigate issues that the bees are getting direct contact with this neurotoxin from covering up my colonies. But sadly, just like bees, just like we drink water, bees drink water, they're hot. And so when they go drink that water, they get that chemical into their system. And within 24 hours, 80% of just one of my colonies of bees, which every single one of those bees in my colony is important to me. They're my children. They provide food for my table, for my wife, and for our community gardeners, and for the people that are sitting in this room because we sell our product at the Dallas Farmers Market, and we love our city, and we don't want to have to move away from here. So it does not make any sense at all to me why, in the way of economy, why we're spraying all of this Aquilor 2020, and if we're going to do the aerial spraying, we're already aerial spraying. We're not ground spraying. And if Duet ends up coming on through the airplanes and the helicopters, then I can assure you that there's a lot of folks that are just licking their chops, just like any sort of Clark environmental executive that would like to take up our case, because this is how I make my living. And as I said, we are supporting not only vertebrate life, but also invertebrate life. And from the EPA itself,
You're well over your time. I appreciate it. If you have any other comments, please submit them to us in writing, and we will get those I'll listen to them seriously. By the way, both for you, Brandon, and our earlier speakers that are in East Dallas, you are in the vector of our enhanced ground spray for the next 3 days. So take whatever precautions you deem appropriate. If aerial spraying happens in your area, I know we're trying to get this out to everyone, it is essentially the same chemical at a slightly lower dosage. You need to take the same precautions there. But I want to make sure that you're aware that we are, as of last night, spraying in your areas under the protocol that Zach talked about earlier.
Water-based versus oil-based. There's some other difference. I wish you'd publish everything you've said, and I know you were basically coming off the top of your head, but I really wish you'd publish that for us to get a chance to.
Well, I'm here to live you to tell about it. My wife followed the DD tree trucks, when she was a kid. And so, we need to really consider what we're doing here. And I think it's really an intellectually polluted conundrum.
I agree, yeah. I want you to publish. I want you to publish whatever your concerns are beyond the 2 minutes, okay?
They're legion.
Yeah, that's fine.
And the sooner the better, because Brandon and I've asked our mayors to make their decision by 5 o'clock Wednesday. And if you will get it to me, we will get it on to the feet of the decision makers in real time. We want everyone to have whatever information they want to look at in making their decisions.
Thank you, Judge Jenkins. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Sean Miller. Mr. Lemoyne, if you'll please state your name and address.
My name is Sean Lemoyne, 613 Penrose, 214, which is basically the corner of Skillman and Mockingbird. Unlike the people who spoke before, I'm a West Nile virus survivor. I was 36 years old when I got bitten over my house in East Dallas. I slowly slipped into a coma. The last thing that I remember was the doctor telling me that I didn't have a brain tumor and they were going to do a spinal tap. And I woke up 3 weeks later. I was ventilated. I was paralyzed from the neck down. I wasn't able to see my 4-year-old son Jack or my 16-month-old daughter Rachel because I was too high of a risk of dying from any external factors that might come into the ICU. I spent the next 6 months ventilated. If you get up next to me, you can see the trach scar. That means the machine breathed for me. Then I spent the following 6 months learning how to walk, move my arms. I also had to relearn how to swallow and talk. There's a lot of you in here with gray hair. There's some of you with no hair like me. You're at risk when you play in your backyards. I'm appreciative of the risks of pesticides. I'm probably more at risk than anybody sitting in this room other than the lady who spoke at the very beginning of an aerial pesticide spray. When I got sick, there were 14 serious neuroinvasive cases reported in countywide. One person died. That person had just come off of chemotherapy and was around 27 years old. I have not met anybody else like me that was 36 years old and developed a serious case of West Nile virus. But you only have to look at the CDC stats to see that for whatever freak reason, we are skyrocketing out of control on the number of people that are getting not just West Nile virus, but neuroinvasive West Nile virus. If I fall down right now, Judge Jenkins, Mr. Price, Mr. Cantrell, y'all can't pick me up because I weigh too much and my body physically will not allow me to do it. I will never hold my children. I will never be able to pick up a grandchild. All because of mosquitoes. And people have bad luck all the time. That's just part of it. But I was the most expensive patient at Baylor Rehab. Somebody's now supplanted that, but living in Baylor for 6 months and in rehab for 6 months, the economic cost is unbelievable. I happen to be a lawyer, and fortunately for me, the encephalitis did not, at least maybe some people say, did not impact my ability to think and to do my job. But if I did any other type of job that required manual labor, it would have destroyed me. The only reason that my family didn't go into bankruptcy is because my law firm was very kind of me. We had some disability policies in place. This stuff is bad. It has a serious detrimental effect on the people that are impacted. All of you are at risk. I'm kind of living proof of that. So if you don't want to have aerial spraying, then you need to stay inside and stay away from the mosquitoes, or you need to soak yourself with DEET when you go out and play, and soak your kids when you go out and play. Yeah, I'm very sympathetic with the people, and in particular the beekeeper. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I don't envy your decision, Judge Jenkins. Thank you.
Gretchen Brosh is our next speaker. Gretchen Brosh.
My name is Gretchen Brosh, and I live at 5429 Neola in Greenway Parks. And I'm sure I can do this after what I just heard, because I'm pretty lucky in perspective. What I want you guys to know about me is that my yard is completely organic. I'm the biggest animal lover around. My dog is for sure the most spoiled in this county. I live in my neighborhood because it's lush and green and it has a lot of squirrels and birds. And I love it, but it's very small. I'm one of 3 at least that have contracted West Nile fever. There's a man across the street from me that I know also had it. His symptoms were very similar to mine. He survived. He's 90. He's one of the people that, one of the reasons why I'm here. About 3 weeks ago, started having flu symptoms. Ended up in the hospital with West Nile fever and meningitis. I feel good now, but I don't have any energy. And there's something wrong with my right wrist and hand that I'm working on. I'll get there, thankfully. But I'm here because we have to, and I'm so sorry for the animals. I'm not educated enough to know what the chemicals will do to them. But we have to think about our people. And I trust this man in front of me to look at all of that and make a decision for all of us about what we need to do. But I had a doctor's appointment yesterday, and my doctor explained that the virus has mutated, and we have a very serious escalating problem that is affecting human health in this city. And I'm honestly very conflicted about the spraying myself. I don't like chemicals. Well, I think if you look, if you examine the risks, I think Judge Jenkins has made a good recommendation on this, and I'm trusting the people in charge of this decision to really look at everything. So please just think about the people. We've got to look at the people more than the animals on this. Thanks for letting me be here.
Our next speaker is Dr. Richard Snyder.
Thank you, Judge. Rick Snyder, 5514 Yolanda, 75229. 8 days ago, the Dallas County Medical Society sent a letter to the Health Department that was shared with the Commissioner's Court, Judge Jenkins, and the Mayor's Office, expressing our deep concern about the historic epidemic of West Nile disease in North Texas, and recommended the immediate implementation of an aerial spraying plan. The Society's recommendation originated from an informal infectious disease physician group representing most of the major hospital systems in the county. They reviewed epidemiological data shared from the Health Department, guidelines from the CDC, EPA, and numerous scientific studies. They voted unanimously, 13-0, for a recommendation of immediate implementation of an aerial spraying in a letter to the health department and our society dated August 3rd. Dr. Luby, the author of that letter from the infectious disease group, will speak after me. The recommendation and data were reviewed subsequently by our Community Emergency Response Committee in an emergency telephone conference Sunday evening a week ago at 7 p.m. This committee, by its nature and design, is made up of physician leaders from all the major hospital systems in the county. They also voted unanimously for the immediate aerial spraying recommendation, 13-0. Finally, the recommendation of this committee, the supporting guidelines and data, were reviewed the next day, a week ago, Monday the 6th, by the full board of directors of the Medical Society. Once again, the recommendation was approved unanimously. In total, 38 physicians of the Society at different levels of leadership and expertise voted unanimously for this recommendation. The recommendation from the Society for immediate implementation of aerial spraying was sent that same night. Given the trajectory of new fatalities and cases that we have witnessed since then, still a little more than halfway through the peak illness season for West Nile disease, the physicians of the Society remain deeply concerned. We've exceeded the previous yearly record for West Nile fatalities in the last 10 days alone. Given the situation, we reaffirm our recommendation that protective measures, including the immediate application of insecticide by air, is clearly warranted at this time. The weight of scientific evidence from a number of published human and environmental studies demonstrates that these applications are efficacious, saving lives, and the human cost of prolonged and permanent neurological impairment from West Nile disease. The scientific data, especially the published and verbally shared experience of the Sacramento Yolo Mosquito Vector Control District, who have sprayed by air yearly since 2005, before human cases emerge, have experienced no human consequence, including a 1,000 population block spray in 2005. This data that aerial spraying can be accomplished with limited exposure risk and minimal adverse effects to human and animal populations. Thank you.
Thank you. And please provide that to me via email as well as the chamber. Our next speaker is Dr. Don Reed.
My name is Dr. Don Reed. I live at 4440 North Haven in Dallas, Texas. I'm a colon and rectal surgeon. I'm the past president of the medical staff at Medical City Dallas Hospital. I'm past president of the Dallas County Medical Society. I'm currently on the board of trustees of the Texas Medical Association, but I'm here speaking as an individual member of the Dallas County Medical Society. My expertise in West Nile virus comes from the fact that I'm a survivor of the disease, and I have run a West Nile virus support group since 2006. For those who come down with the severe form of the disease, West Nile virus is devastating. When I came down with West Nile virus in 2005, I was a perfectly healthy surgeon working an average of 88.7 hours a week. 8 days after getting sick, I became paralyzed and was in ICU. My legs were mostly paralyzed and my arms were partly paralyzed, so that I couldn't even turn over in bed. I couldn't talk, I couldn't write, for a while I couldn't hear. I spent 5 weeks in ICU, 2 months in inpatient rehab, 2 months in every 4-day outpatient rehab, and 2 years in once a week outpatient rehab. Because of the prayers of hundreds of people and excellent medical care, I didn't die, fortunately, and was able to get back to work. I was out of work for 7 months because West Nile virus sapped your endurance. When I went back to work, I could see patients for 1 hour and then go home and go to bed because I was exhausted. It was a year before I could work a reasonable schedule. Because of the polio-like paralysis from West Nile virus, I still wear braces on both legs, as you can see. Due to my leg weakness, I had to quit doing abdominal surgery. If it weren't for the support of my partners, like Sean Lemoyne, and I would have gone bankrupt and had to retire. After 7 years, I still am only able to work about 35 hours a week, less than half my pre-illness workload. My leg strength and my endurance will never be completely back to normal. From working with many other West Nile survivors through my support group, I can tell you that although some survivors do completely recover by the end of 1 year, many others have permanent, long-lasting disabilities. West Nile virus doesn't just affect the elderly. At the same time Sean Lemoyne was on a ventilator, there was another 35-year-old man on a ventilator. He died. West Nile virus is like cancer. It's not a big deal unless you have it. But if you do have it, it can be a disaster from which you will never fully recover. On behalf of West Nile survivors, I deeply appreciate the excellent work that Director Zach Thompson and his staff have done in trying to keep the mosquito population under control. But because of the unusually large number of cases, it is apparent to me that the disease has escaped the ability of our current protocol to contain the infected mosquitoes. Therefore, on behalf of those people whose disease may be prevented by aerial spraying, I thank you for giving serious consideration to aerial spraying.
Our next speaker is Dr. Jim Luby.
My name is Jim Luby. I live at 4312 Fairfax. I was the former chief of the Division of Infectious Diseases at the medical school for 22 years. I wanted to call the attention of the group to the fact that the West Nile virus, it has a close relative, namely St. Louis encephalitis virus. They are members of the same virus group, and they have been with this community for at least a 50-year period. One epidemic of St. Louis encephalitis virus in 1966 cost the city 168 cases and 16 deaths. It necessitated aerial spray for its control. Critical to this is that the city of Dallas has initiated and gone through the 7-day aerial spraying maneuver to stop the St. Louis encephalitis virus in 1966. Before the spraying event in 1966, 1 in 150 mosquitoes was infected. After the spraying event, less than 1 in 50,000 was infected. The epidemic curve illustrated the rapid decline in human cases after aerial spraying. The spraying was thought to be safe. In an economic analysis of the spraying event, aerial spray is mentioned, but not its complications, so it didn't figure into the author's economic analysis. Subsequent to that, people have gone into the Dallas communities in which these cases occurred, and in Dallas in 1966, it was the South Dallas epidemic. And they have bled people, and they have found evidence that as many as 25%, often in preceding years, have been infected with this virus. So the problem with this virus and West Nile virus, or this class of viruses, is that it poses a permanent, recurring threat to this community, which we must deal with over the long period of time. The Dallas had epidemics of St. Louis encephalitis in 1976 and in 1995, each less than 35 cases. Nobody advocated aerial spray for the control. West Nile virus came into being in 1999 in North America. It spread across the country, and in 2003, 2006, we had large epidemics in Dallas. In 2006, there were 104 cases, including 4 deaths. This present epidemic dwarfs all of those, and I contend that this is a once-in-a-50-year event. The Dallas 1966 St. Louis encephalitis epidemic and this present epidemic are the ones that I would call attention to, and the only ones I advocate aerial spraying for. I think that we need to kill infected mosquitoes in the areas in which they are causing human disease, and that, for the present purposes, is selected portions of North Dallas County.
Our final speaker is Leah Thompson Fudge.
I'm Leah Thompson Fudge. I live at 9034 Dyson. I live in the Little Forest Hills area near Watermark Lake. And I've been a registered nurse in the Dallas area for the last 12 years. specializing in geriatric care in a community setting. I also have a degree in cultural anthropology, and until recently I served as the chair of the Garland Senior Citizen Advisory Commission and on the Senior Roundtable for State Representative Angie Chinbutton in District 112. I had a statement prepared this morning, but I just received an email from a local doctor that she has requested that I share, so I'm going to read that instead. As a physician who every day sees the consequences of our population awash in a sea of chemicals, I cry for our children and grandchildren who are being slowly poisoned. It is the chemical and pharmaceutical industries perpetuating ignorance, fear-mongering, and greed-based manipulation of the media and public who will benefit financially from the misinformation and lies used to justify this public health crisis and aerial spraying of pesticides to prevent West Nile virus. My 16-year-old daughter had to stop running this morning because her lungs hurt from breathing the air, and we live in a relatively clean spot surrounding White Rock Lake. Dallas already has some of the worst air quality in the country, along with thousands of cases of asthmatic emergencies, and now you are thinking about aerial pesticides? Where is the science? Where is the proof that this has any efficacy in the long run? Where is the informed consent for administering poisons to the unsuspecting masses? I feel terrible that those people have died, but is the answer more poisons that all of us will be exposed to? Did anyone even bother checking the victims for their vitamin D levels or factoring how suppressed, depressed, or otherwise compromised their immune systems were that made them susceptible to getting an infection? Was it really just the West Nile virus? No. From a public health perspective, we need to be looking far beyond whether a few mosquitoes are the problem, to food quality, environmental chemicals, water quality, air quality, and social stressors. And have we looked why there are so many mosquitoes in the first place? You propose spraying poisons that will kill beneficial insects as well, and sicken and compromise the very birds and spiders and bats that prey on mosquitoes. Not to mention poison the gardens of those who grow food without chemicals. Have we not learned the lessons from antibiotic-resistant bacteria in medicine, from chemically resistant bugs and weeds in agriculture? Have any of you, especially the physicians involved in this decision-making, looked at the volumes of data regarding the negative health consequences of pesticides, particularly to endocrine and nervous systems, even in very low quantity, from infertility to cancer, to neurologic disease and learning disabilities, to immune suppression, to asthma, allergies, and hormone disruption, including diabetes? Have you kept up with the scientists and physicians and organizations, such as the Union of Concerned Scientists, the Collaborative for Health and the Environment, the Environmental Working Group, International Pesticide Action Network, and Physicians for Social Responsibility? Wake up, look at the facts, just say no. And this is from Margaret Christensen, MD. She's on the faculty of the National Institute for Functional Medicine.
National Institute for what?
Functional medicine. Functional medicine looks at root causes of issues more than just the symptoms. And what we're doing by aerial spraying is treating a symptom. This West Nile is floating as a symptom of a much bigger problem. And we need to be solving the root cause of this, and that's going to save more lives.
And what do you believe the root cause of West Nile virus is?
All the things I just listed.
Yeah, could you please send that to us via email and Shay's got an email.
And Judge, you would like to be sure that everything that was expressed today during the public hearing will be given to all the mayors and all
That's
the
correct.
people that we interact with. Thank you.
Well, I just want to say I really appreciate all this has come down, and my opinion is not being swayed, but I just appreciate the opportunity. I look forward to getting that information and reading and sharing it not only with the mayors, but members of our public health committee with regards to maybe, I see Mr. Thompson's out right now, but maybe we need a briefing on something that's just straight up what's not. Maybe that needs to be put on the agenda. But, thank you.
All right, any other moments of personal privilege? Not on the closing privilege of the work session. Anyone?
I just want to say to the two speakers that we have who suffered from West Nile virus, God bless you, and I hope that you recover from this.
More importantly, a lot of the speakers have been involved in these issues for many years. So I'm glad for your advocacy and for your being here today. Thank you.
All right, in a moment I'll call for our closed session. I see we have a lot of media here, and this is a very covered matter and a very important public matter. We've got a relatively short closed session today. We've got a lot of county employees that need to get back to work and others, so I would just ask that we all go to closed, get that quorum in there, and we'll get it up quickly, and people can get out that would like to speak to the media. But let's all get into closed, please. We'll start 1 minute after this announcement. The court is now reconvened in public session and a recess for its closed session is authorized by Chapter 561 of the Texas Government Code of Securities. Any action resulting from closed session is taken place in subsequent open session